Hi and welcome back to the Girl Gone London channel. My name is Kaylin. I'm a dual UK and US citizen, and today we are doing a classic deep dive into fish and chips. It's basically the UK's most iconic dish, and in this video we're learning all about how fish and chips actually came to the UK from somewhere else, as well as things like how fish and chips changed in the 1980s and what in the world fish and chips have to do with World War II. I love learning more about British culture now that I'm a naturalized Brit myself, so sorry if this makes you hungry, but hopefully your local fish and chip shop is open tonight. Oh, and one more thing. I wanted to let you in on something I've been working on for those of you interested in learning more about American culture, the other half of my identity. On this channel, I do UK versus US content, hence the Girl Gone London name. But you've all enjoyed these deep dives so much that I thought, what if I did research into classic American things? From the Pledge of Allegiance, to the iconic American presidential vacation home, Camp David, to upcoming topics like the Super Bowl and red Solo cups. So my other channel was born. Link is in the description and in the comments. There you're going to find videos much like these, just solely focused on life across the pond. If you are interested, first stay here, watch this video, because if you click off now, it will tell YouTube that you don't like this video and that will make them and me sad. But when you're finished here, head on over to the other channel, All American Atlas, and subscribe if this kind of content is interesting to you. If it's not interesting, sorry, I just wasted your time telling you about it. Let's keep going. So how much does the UK love fish and chips? Because they do. They love it. On average, Britons spend over £1 billion on fish and chips every single year, and it's 2 to 4 times more popular than the next most popular takeaway, Indian food. The 2 to 4 times is because I found different statistics, so we're going to say it's between 2 and 4 times more. This equates to over 380 million fish and chip meals eaten in the UK every year, and there are currently over 10,000 fish and chip shops in the UK. If you're not from the UK, you should know that it's very popular to have a local fish and chip shop, or multiple depending on the area. Unless you're very, very rural, most people won't have to drive too far to find one. So what are fish and chips? Let's get clear on what they are in case you're not from the UK. There are 2 main types of fish used in fish and chips, cod and haddock, but cod is still the most popular, with haddock second. There are also other types of fish that occasionally can be used, or you could special order, like plaice, rock, and skate. The cuts of fish, usually about the length of like a medium-sized dinner plate, but this can vary, are covered in a batter made from water, flour, and a little baking soda, and they're fried in vegetable oil for the most part. Some fish and chip shops in the north of England and Scotland, and actually the majority of those in Northern Ireland, still use beef dripping for frying, which is a bit more old school. The chips part of the meal, or what Americans would call fries, are fried potatoes, but the very thick cut kind, not a skinny fry. So British people watching this are like, it is not a fry. I'm just saying to my American viewers, it is what you would consider a thick cut fry, known as chips in the UK. Traditionally, salt and vinegar are sprinkled over the fish and chips through most of the UK, though in some places in Scotland a brown sauce can be used. Tartar sauce is also commonly used. Mushy peas, which if you haven't heard or eaten them, are peas that are mushy, hence the name, they look like this, are also a popular side dish. Now let's move on to some fish and chips fun facts. Have you ever wondered about the world's largest portion of fish and chips, or the record number of fish and chip portions sold in one day? Of course you haven't. Why would you do that? But I'm going to tell you anyway. The world record for the number of fish and chips sold in one day was by Marini's in Glasgow, Scotland at 12,406 portions. I hope I said Marini's right. If I didn't, comment below and let me know. Another fun fact is that the world's largest portion of fish and chips was made by Fish and Chips, great name, in London in July of 2012, weighing over 47 kilograms. Other interesting stats, Birmingham beats every other UK city for the number of people who say they add curry sauce to their fish and chips, while Belfast is top for splashing on vinegar, and Manchester wins for adding mushy peas. Apparently Cardiff ranks in the top for the most amount of salt added, speaking my language, while Glaswegians like to eat them on the way home from the pub. Very scientific research was done for this survey, I'm sure. Moving on to the history of fish and chips before we get to its World War II connection. While fish and chips are now associated with the UK, it's like an iconic dish. They're not actually British in origin in the original sense. The tradition of frying white fish in flour came to the UK when Portuguese Jews fled to Britain in the late 15th and early 16th century. The original method was done more to preserve the fish so it could be eaten the next day, but the Brits got a taste of it and started enjoying this delicacy and called it fish cooked in the Jewish manner. The first popular literary reference to fish and chips was by our friend Charles Dickens, who mentioned a fried fish warehouse in Oliver Twist in 1838, but the first fish and chip shop to open was one in London by a Jewish immigrant named Joseph Mallon in 1860, shortly followed by a man in the north of England, John Lees, who had a chipped potato restaurant in 1863 and also sold fish and chips. There is some controversy on the internet over which one of these was like 100% the first. If you're from the north of England and you really believe in John Lees as like the fish and chips hero, go for it. The research I did suggests that the one in London, despite the controversy, was the very first one. But again, I'm not trying to start anything on the internet. So I'm going to say they both were around the same. Can you see how careful I'm being here? Because I do not want anybody to be offended if I get it wrong on the very first fish and chip shop. This is just what I've read. They were really around the same time. But resources suggest that London was the first. But again, if you have information to the contrary, let me know. Now, the time period for both of these fish and chips shops is important because it's leading up to the Industrial Revolution, where steam trains and ice packers meant that fish becomes more easy to transport, becomes cheaper, and soon fish and chips shops were opening up across the country. It was primarily a working class meal back in the day, and in the 1920s, there were over 35,000 fish and chip shops around the UK. So what happens during World War II? During the war, the British public had to give up a lot of food options during the ration system. Things like eggs, sugar, jam, butter. But the government believed that access to fish and chips without rationing would keep up morale on the home front. So they made an effort to create a continuous supply of fish and potatoes, despite disruptions caused by attacks on the supply chain. This shows just how important this dish was to the identity of Britain and to getting through hard times. The latest change to fish and chips happened in the 80s, when a new food hygiene rule banned the use of real newspaper for wrapping fish and chips. Obviously, there was a chance that ink would rub off onto the meal, and generally, you probably shouldn't be consuming newspaper ink, just as a general rule. I don't know, just a guess. If you're a medical professional, let us know. So nowadays, you'll usually have it wrapped in a food-safe paper wrapping or a layer of food-safe paper wrapping, then covered by newspaper, with the newspaper not actually touching the food. And sometimes companies will even use like printed food-safe paper wrapping, so it doesn't have things that are bad for you that are going to rub off on your food, but it looks like newspaper as opposed to being actual newspaper. Now that brings us to the end of this video on fish and chips. I would love to hear your thoughts. How do you eat your fish and chips? Do you miss the days of eating newspaper wrapped fish and chips? What are some fun facts that you know about fish and chips? What is the name of your local fish and chip shops? Because that's another thing I didn't mention, is that fish and chip shops are known to have quite funny names sometimes, and that's kind of a British cultural thing. There's just so much more we could probably talk about with fish and chips, so let's take it to the comments. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.